Welcome to Ardent MDS. I am Dr. Joshna, Master Teacher of Ardent MDS. So today we are going to see about the various diagnostic modalities which we are used to diagnose the salivary gland disorders. So we know there are three sets of major salivary gland, which are parotid gland, submandibular gland and your sublingual gland. And there are about 400 to 500 number of minor salivary glands present over the buccal mucosa, tongue, or the retromolar region, palatal region as well. So the minor salivary glands are not seen over your gingiva and on the anterior portion of your palate. So just brushing up the embryology and the microanatomy alone before going into the diagnostic modality. So the salivary glands are developed as an outgrowth from the buccal epithelium. So the major salivary glands begins to develop at 35th day of intrauterine life, while the minor salivary glands development begins at 40th day of intrauterine life. And another important thing is that parotid is ectodermal in origin. Parotid gland alone is ectodermal in origin, while the submandibular and sublingual glands are endodermal in origin. Other glands. So this is an exception. So just note it down. Parotid is ectodermal in origin, while the submandibular and sublingual glands are endodermal in origin. And coming to the microanatomy, we know the basic units of the salivary gland tissue comprises of acinus and the secretory ducts and excretory ducts. Secretory and excretory ducts. So this secretory ducts are again divided into intercalated duct and striated duct. So secretory ducts are again intercalated duct and striated ducts, right? So acinus, secretory duct and excretory duct. In secretory duct we have the intercalated duct and the striated ducts are present. So this is the histopathological diagram. It was asked in the previous NEET exam to figure out which is the serous acini or the mucous acini. So in a mixed salivary gland tissue, you can see both the serous acini and the mucous acini. The submandibular gland is your mixed salivary gland, while the parotid is a purely serous salivary gland. The sublingual gland is purely mucous. So here in this figure you can see both the mucous cells and the serous cells. So it is a mixed type of salivary gland, which is a submandibular gland. And commonly in a histopathological diagram, the serous cells can be identified in a way that it will be dark bluish in color and your mucous cells will be slightly less bluish or pink in color, or lightly colored is the mucous cells. And another term known as the demilunes of serous cells. Actually it is a cell structure or the serous cells which can be seen over your mucous cells or the secreto-alveolar duct on the distal part. So these demilunes of serous cells are half moon shaped cells. It is otherwise known as crescents of Ganussi. These are semilunar shaped or the half moon shaped demilunes of serous cells. So this is the demilunes of serous cells, and identify the serous and mucous cells based on its color. In a good histopathological picture, you can identify the serous cells and mucous cells. This is just a diagrammatic representation. So coming to the diagnostic modality. So any diagnosis which will start with a good history followed by the clinical examination, right? So this is known as the bimanual palpation, which is typically used in submandibular salivary gland examination. So in which you are putting your one finger over the sublingual area and one hand is in your submandibular region, and you are palpating to see whether there is any tumor or any swelling or abnormality associated with the submandibular gland. So it is called a bimanual palpation. Next, we have to go for the imaging method. So there are a number of imaging methods to analyze the salivary gland disorders. So once we start with a plain radiograph, which include the OPG and your occlusal radiograph. So in the given OPG, you can see a radiopaque structure here, and in your anterior mandibular occlusal view, here one radiopaque structure you can see. So this depicts a salivary calculi. Since this position is in the ramal region, it will be probably a parotid calculi. So this is mandibular anterior view, and this is showing a picture of a submandibular calculi. So it is better to go for a mandibular anterior occlusal view to know the submandibular salivary gland calculi, or if you are suspecting a calculi in the salivary submandibular gland. So next is the psilography. Actually, psilography is the gold standard to visualize your salivary duct, ductal system as well as the gland. Right. So to visualize the duct as well as the gland, the psilography is used, and it was first mentioned by the person Carpi, and it was first performed by Arcelin. So just remember these two names in association with psilography. It was first mentioned by Carpi and it was first performed by Arcelin. So psilography is nothing but it is the radiographic visualization of your salivary gland duct as well as the gland by retrograde installation of several contrast agents before imaging. So that is the psilography. So we will see the various indications and the contraindications of psilography. So indications means when we have to find a tumor, or if we have to find a salivary calculi or any cyst associated with your salivary gland, in those cases you can go for psilography. And also to select a site for biopsy, in those cases also you can go for psilography. And the contraindication is important. We have 3 contraindication. One is the patient is sensitive to iodine compounds. Since we are using the contrast media, most of them are iodine based. If the patient is sensitive to iodine compounds, we can't do a psilography. And second contraindication is acute inflammation. So performing a psilography during acute inflammation can exacerbate the inflammation. And third contraindication is if the patient need to perform a TFT, thyroid function test, in the near term, then we can't go for psilography, because in TFT also they are assessing the iodine. So we are using iodine in psilography, so there may be false positive or negative test. So these are the 3 contraindications for doing psilography. And next we will see about the various contrast media that we are used for psilography. We have 2 types of contrast media: water soluble contrast media and oil based contrast media. So what are the difference of these two, or the advantages and disadvantages of these two? So this water based contrast media means the viscosity will be very less in water based contrast media, while the oil based will have more viscosity. So from that itself we can understand the water based contrast media will fill even the narrower ductile regions, while the oil based contrast media they can't go for that much flow, or they can't fill the narrower fine ducts, right? So that is the based on the difference in viscosity. Okay. So next advantage of water based means it can be excreted very easily, while the oil based may retain in the canals or the ducts. Okay. And coming to the various examples for water soluble, we have hypaque, isopaque, dianosyl, diodrast. These are the examples for your water based contrast media. While for examples of oil based, we have ethiodol and lipiodol. These are the examples for oil based. And this advantage of oil based contrast media is that it gives a very good contrast when compared to your water based contrast agent, right? So that is all about the water based and oil based contrast media, and just remember the examples as well. So we will see how we perform a xylography. So this is a picture. You can see here a cannula is inserted into the parotid gland duct or the Stenson's duct. So first we have to localize the duct, and after that we dilate the duct, then we cannulate it, followed by injection of your contrast agent, either water soluble or your water soluble or oil based contrast agent. So for major salivary glands, we are using 0.75 to 1 ml of contrast medium are used for parotid gland mainly, and the submandibular gland 0.5 ml to 0.75 ml of contrast medium is used. This is for parotid, this is for submandibular gland. So this is how we perform a xylography, and after that we have to image. So there are three phases of xylography. The first phase is the ductal phase. So we have seen it is a retrograde installation. So first we start with duct, then go for acina phase, then the contrast medium reaches the acinae, then finally it gets excreted. So final phase is excretory phase. So these are the three phases: ductal phase, acina phase and excretory phase. So after the imaging we get certain pictures. So it is important to identify which disease is shown in the xylogram. That is often asked question. They will show a xylographic image and ask you to identify the disorder. So here this is I showed here is this image is typically termed like tree in winter appearance, and this is bush in winter appearance. So these are actually not disorders. This is the normal xylographic image of your parotid gland, and when it is bush in winter means it is your submandibular gland. This is the normal xylographic image, and normal xylographic image of your ductal system is known as leafless tree appearance. So you have to remember these terms. Leafless tree appearance is normal ductal system. So this is tree in winter for parotid gland. This is bush in winter for submandibular gland. And again next xylographic image. This is xylodochitis. Xylodochitis means it is the inflammation of your salivary duct. That can be due to the calculi or any foreign bodies. So this is the image of cylodockitis, and here you can see the salivary gland tumor is imaged like a ball in hand appearance. It is typically seen in tumor. Salivary gland tumors are seen in ball in hand appearance. So we have to remember the term as well as the image also. Next is the very important image. Sjogren syndrome is imaged here. So the typical appearance is known as cherry blossom. So here you can see the xylographic image of the Sjogren syndrome. It is known as cherry blossom appearance or burst branches of fruit laden tree appearance. Branches of fruit laden tree appearance. So these are the terms used for xylographic image of Sjogren syndrome. So these are the various xylographic image. Just to recap, you can see first the normal xylographic image of parotid gland, tree in winter appearance, and this is submandibular gland, bush in winter appearance, and here this is cylodockitis, and here ball in hand appearance seen in your salivary gland tumors, and this is Sjogren syndrome, which is known as cherry blossom or fruit laden tree appearance. So next imaging method is CT, and we have MRI. Right. So CT, here the given picture you can see a salivary gland stone here. So this silolithiasis we can use CT, and also the other inflammatory disorders also can be diagnosed with a CT image. And when coming to MRI, we are using MRI mainly to identify the tumors. So in the given picture you can see this is your parotid gland. So here in this side the parotid gland is enlarged. So the parotid tumors or any submandibular tumors as well can be imaged better in your MRI. Next imaging modality is USG, ultrasonography. So USG is very inexpensive method and it is very safe method of imaging the various salivary gland disorders. So for USG we can see the inflammatory diseases, and also we can distinguish between cystic as well as the solid disorders can be distinguished, and also the extraglandular or intraglandular diseases can be determined through doing a USG. So these are the indications to do a USG. Next comes FNAC. FNAC is another gold standard of diagnosing tumor. So mostly the FNAC is done by guided with a USG. So you can distinguish between a neoplastic and a non-neoplastic disease, as well as the benign and malignant disease can be distinguished with FNAC. We can get an idea either it is benign or malignant, and neoplastic or non-neoplastic. So that's about FNAC. Then comes the other imaging modalities. This is PET scan. PET scan means positron emission tomography. Positron emission tomography. It is done by using a compound known as FDG. FDG means fluorodeoxyglucose. So the importance of fluorodeoxyglucose is that it will accumulate in areas where there is more metabolic activity happens. So we know in cases of carcinoma there will be more metabolic activity of the tissue. So this FDG tend to accumulate in those areas. So we can easily identify the tumor with FDG PET. And here this is an image of radionuclide imaging. These are recent imaging modality. So in this apart from identifying the abnormal anatomy of salivary gland, we can identify the secretory function of salivary gland. So that is the importance of radionuclide imaging. Secretory function of salivary gland is also analyzed, and it is done by using a compound technetium or gallium. That is radionuclide imaging, right? So next, this is a picture of xyloendoscopy. So as with any endoscope, it is a minimally invasive procedure. When the xyloendoscope is in concern, it is both diagnostic and therapeutic. Because it is diagnostic means we can identify any calculi or any other abnormalities of your salivary gland ductal system, and if it is the stone present in the salivary duct is very small, we can remove it with the xyloendoscope. So there are various generations of xyloendoscopes are present. So this is one of the minimally invasive method. And then comes the molecular method. The recent molecular studies like FISH and IHC. So according to these studies, they have found out several genes are responsible for several salivary gland tumors. So you should be familiar with the genes associated with your salivary gland tumors. So for pleomorphic adenoma, the responsible gene is PLGA, and MAML2 is associated with mucoepidermoid carcinoma, and for adenoid cystic carcinoma, the gene responsible is MYB, and for hyalysing clear cell carcinoma, it is EWSR1, and PLGA PRKD is associated with cribriform adenocarcinoma of the minor salivary gland. So just memorize this table to identify or to score your questions regarding molecular studies. And the final diagnosis is obviously the definitive diagnosis comes the open biopsy. So the open biopsy mainly in Sjogren syndrome, we will do biopsy of lower lip. So to diagnose a Sjogren syndrome, we should get a minimum of 10 minor salivary glands from lower lip to score a focus or to assign a focus score. So this, what is a focus in Sjogren syndrome means? So focus means a 50 lymphocytes in a salivary gland tissue. When you see through a high power microscope, means it is a focus. So in this kind of 4 focuses or greater than 4 focuses is diagnostic of Sjogren syndrome. So I will repeat, for Sjogren syndrome you will do lower lip biopsy to get a 10 minor salivary glands, and this 10 minor salivary glands, when you see through your high power microscope, you will see so many lymphocytes. So if a lymphocytes, a 50 number of lymphocytes means that is a focus. So in those kind of greater than 4 focuses is diagnostic of your open biopsy. So open biopsy is always, it is the most diagnostic modality for identifying a salivary gland disorders. So that's about the various diagnostic modality. So we have discussed the invasive and non-invasive diagnostic techniques for diagnosing salivary gland disorders, which xylography is one of the important topic. You will be asking to identify the xylographic image. So just go through the images and just familiar with the images as well. So thank you so much and have a happy learning.